Have you ever wondered why something that can feel so good can end up causing so much pain? It's a question that a lot of us have. Today, we're going to dive deep into the neuroscience of addiction. We're going to go way beyond the simple ideas of willpower or character and look at the powerful biological reasons that are happening deep inside our brains. We're going to find out exactly what happens when the brain gets hooked.
This quote is from a neuroscientist, and she's talking about her first real drink. She was just 13 years old. And for her, it wasn't just, a sip of alcohol. She describes it as a truly transcendent experience. In that one moment, she felt this sudden, perfect wholeness. And that feeling, that one moment, started a lifelong question for her. How could something that felt so incredibly right become so destructive? And really, that's the question at the very heart of addiction, isn't it?
All right, so here's the plan for our journey. We're going to start with a drive that is surprisingly universal. Then, we'll get into the brain's fundamental balancing act. After that, we'll see how that elegant system gets hijacked and leads to addiction. Then we'll put it all into practice with two big case studies, alcohol and marijuana, before we get to the central, kind of mind-bending paradox of this whole thing.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a really critical idea. This desire we have to alter how we feel, it isn't some new modern problem. It's not a sign of weakness. It turns out it's an ancient, incredibly powerful, and totally natural tendency that we see all through history, and not just with humans.
And I mean it when I say it's not just us. This drive is literally all over the animal kingdom. You've got birds that will eat fermented berries until they're stumbling around completely tipsy. There are stories of elephants breaking into distilleries to get a drink. But my absolute favorite example has to be these ants in South America that actually cultivate a specific type of beetle. And they don't do it for food. No, they do it for a psychoactive fungus that grows on the beetle's legs. So yeah, this impulse to mess with our own consciousness, it's about as fundamental as it gets.
So if we want to understand addiction, we first have to understand the brain's #1 prime directive, maintain balance. This one concept, it's called homeostasis, and it is the key that unlocks absolutely everything else we're going to talk about today. So what exactly is homeostasis? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like your body's internal thermostat, right? If you get too hot, what happens? You start to sweat to cool yourself down. If you get too cold, you start to shiver to generate heat. The goal is always to get back to that stable 98.6-degree baseline. And your brain is working tirelessly, 24/7, to maintain exactly this kind of equilibrium in all of its systems.
And here's the thing. This rule of balance doesn't just apply to your body temperature. It applies to your emotional and your psychological states too. So when a drug enters the system, the brain doesn't register it as fun or relaxing. No, it sees it as a massive disruption, a huge forceful push away from its carefully maintained neutral state. And the moment that happens, it immediately starts working to push back.
So how does the brain fight back? Well, it uses this brilliant thing called the opponent process theory. You can think of it like a two-step dance. First, you've got the A process. That's the direct effect of the drug, the high, the euphoria, that feeling of relaxation. But then, almost immediately, the brain kicks in with the B process. And the B process is an equal and opposite reaction, specifically designed to pull everything back down to that homeostatic baseline.
Now, here's the really crucial part. The A process and the B process, they don't operate on the same timeline. The brain's B process is always a little slower to get going, but, and this is key, it sticks around for much longer than the drug's initial effect. This little lag is what explains so much. It's that back-to-work sadness you feel after a great vacation. It's the hangover after a night of drinking. It's the B process still trying to counteract a high that's already faded away.
So the big question, how does this totally normal process lead to addiction? Well, that B process is a brilliant survival mechanism. But when you repeatedly use a drug, that very same mechanism becomes the engine that drives the whole cycle of addiction. It's a smart adaptation that, unfortunately, gets turned against us. You have to remember, your brain is a powerful learning machine. When it gets exposed to the same drug over and over again, it doesn't just react anymore, it starts to anticipate. It gets better and stronger and faster at producing that opposite B process. And what's the result of that? Well, the original high, the A process, starts to feel weaker and it doesn't last as long. This right here is the neurobiological root of what we call tolerance.
You can see this B process perfectly if you just look at the symptoms of withdrawal. They are the literal perfect mirror image of the drug's effects. Opiates bring euphoria and they relieve pain. Well, withdrawal brings dysphoria and intense pain.
Stimulants make you feel awake and alert. Withdrawal makes you feel lethargic and exhausted. Alcohol brings relaxation. Withdrawal brings crippling anxiety and insomnia. The brain is always creating the exact opposite state.
So now, when we look at the formal definition of addiction, you can see these brain processes written all over it. Tolerance? Well, that's just the brain getting more efficient at its B process. Dependence and withdrawal? That's the feeling of that B process being fully active, but with no A process from the drug to balance it out. See, these aren't moral failures. They are predictable biological adaptations.
And the brain gets so good at this, so efficient, that it doesn't even need the drug to start the process anymore. You remember Pavlov's dogs, right? They learn to salivate at the sound of a bell? Well, our brains do the same thing. They learn to associate certain cues with the drug. It could be the time of day, a particular person, a song, a stressful feeling. Even just a hot, humid day can be enough to trigger that B process. And what does that feel like in your body? An intense physical craving. The brain is literally creating the low in anticipation of the high.
To understand the trap, you have to understand the brain's prime directive, in a way.
Which is stability.
Stability. It's constantly, relentlessly striving for a stable internal state. We call it homeostasis, or internal equilibrium.
And why is that so important?
Well, this internal balance is seen as a kind of precondition for, for a free and independent life. The brain hates being pushed too far off balance.
So anything that disrupts that balance, a drug, a shock.
Anything potent, yes. Whether it's pharmacological or even a strong psychological event, it triggers an immediate involuntary countermeasure. The brain fights back to restore equilibrium.
And this fight, this is where the opponent process theory comes in.
Precisely. It's built on this compensatory drive. The core idea is simple but profound. Pleasure and pain are inextricably linked.
Two sides of the same coin you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. You can't have a significant swing in your emotional state one way or the other without the brain generating a counterforce in the opposite direction. It wants that needle back in the middle.
How does it do that? What are the mechanics?
It involves two key processes happening simultaneously, working against each other. The A process and the B process.
Okay, let's break this down. The A process.
The A process is the initial direct effect of the stimulus. So you take a stimulant, that immediate rush of euphoria, that's the A process. It's usually fast, intense, maybe relatively short-lived.
Got it. The direct impact.
Right. But then comes the crucial part, especially for understanding compulsion. The B process.
The opponent.
The opponent. It's the brain's involuntary, automatic, compensatory response. Its only job is to counteract the A process. It pushes in the exact opposite effective direction.
Opposite direction. Meaning if the A process is pleasure, the B process is
pain or dysphoria or anxiety. If the A process is sedation, the B process is agitation or alertness. It's trying to pull the system back to baseline, back to that stable equilibrium.
And this happens with any stimulus that changes how we feel, drugs, or even just life events?
That's the key insight. Any stimulus, psychological or pharmacological, that significantly shifts your feeling state is guaranteed to elicit this counter response, this B process. The brain doesn't ask permission, it just does it.
Wow. Okay, that's a big concept. Maybe some everyday examples would help make it clearer. Does this A-B process show up in non-addictive experiences?
Oh, absolutely, all the time.
Yeah.
It helps explain a lot of common human feelings. Think about fear and relief.
Okay, like maybe something intense but safe, like skydiving.
Perfect example. Imagine you're doing a skydive. During the jump, especially the free fall, you experience intense fear, right?
Oh.
Heart pounding, maybe terror. That's a massive A process.
Definitely an A process.
Right. Now, what happens after you land safely? You don't just go back to feeling neutral, do you?
No, not usually. There's often this calm, or even a kind of elation, a deep relaxation.
Exactly. That feeling after the intense fear is the B process. The brain ramped up this anti-fear response to counteract the A process. Once the fear stimulus, the A process, stops, the B process is still running strong for a while, and it overshoots the baseline.
Overshoots, pulling you below neutral into calm or relief.
Precisely. That lingering calm is the B process making itself known.
Okay, I can see that. What about something like health anxiety?
Another great example. Imagine you find a lump or have a scary symptom. The intense worry, the anxiety that consumes you for days or weeks, that's the A process.
A very unpleasant A process.
Very. Now you finally get the test back, and the doctor says, it's benign, you're fine. What do you feel?
Immense relief. Like overwhelming relief. Happiness, gratitude, maybe.
Right, you don't just feel not worried anymore. You feel actively good, maybe even euphoric for a bit. Again, that's the B process, the anti-anxiety mechanism, overshooting that neutral baseline because it was working so hard against the worry.
It's like the bigger the initial swing A process, the bigger the potential counterswing B process afterwards.
That's a key part of the theory, yes. The characteristics of the B process change with experience, but initially, a strong A often provokes a noticeable B.
Does this apply to positive emotions too, like falling in love?
It does. Think about the beginning of a passionate relationship. That intense euphoria, the high of new love, that's a powerful A process.
Right, the honeymoon phase.
Exactly. Now, that initial intensity usually fades over time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not necessarily because the love is gone, but the brain adapts. That elevated state becomes the new normal baseline, partly because the B process grows stronger to counteract the constant high.
Okay, so the B process is working quietly in the background.
It is. But what happens if that love is suddenly lost? A breakup, a death?
Crushing grief, devastation.
That intense pain, the anguish that's the powerful B process which had been silently opposing the love high, now left running without the A process to counter. It drags the emotional state way down.
Wow, that really reframes grief.
It helps understand its intensity, certainly. Even something simple like coming home from a great vacation.
The post-vacation blues.
Exactly. You are in an elevated state, low stress, lots of novelty, A process. You get back to routine, and you feel a bit down, let down. That's the lingering B process pulling you slightly below your normal baseline before things restabilize.
Okay, seeing it in these everyday examples makes the AB process much clearer. So now let's apply this directly to drugs.
This is where it becomes central to understanding addiction. Remember, drugs don't create new pathways or feelings out of thin air.
Right, you said they just modulate existing systems, speed them up, or slow them down.
Precisely. They hijack the natural machinery. So, the inescapable consequence, based on the opponent process theory, is clear.
Whatever the drug does initially, the A process.
The brain, through the B process, will produce the opposite prolonged effect to compensate.
Give me an example. Alcohol for stress relief.
Perfect. Someone drinks regularly to unwind, to feel relaxed, A process, sedation, anxiety reduction.
Yeah.
The brain compensates by ramping up an opposing B process, creating underlying anxiety, agitation, alertness.
So over time, the baseline shifts.
Yes. Chronic use means the B process becomes stronger and lasts longer. Eventually, the person isn't drinking to feel good. They're drinking just to quell the unpleasant B process, the anxiety, the shakes, and feel somewhat normal. Their baseline state without the drug is anxious and uncomfortable. It leads to chronic anxiety, insomnia, the exact opposite of the initial reason for drinking.
And stimulants, like ecstasy for euphoria.
Same principle, opposite direction. The A process is intense, euphoria, energy, connection. The brain compensates with a B process, creating dysphoria, lethargy, depression. After the drug wears off, that B process dominates, leading to the characteristic crash or severe depression that can follow.
The brain demands balance.
It commands balance, and the B process is its relentless enforcer. The individual using the substance ends up paying the price in the form of that opposing effect. It's an unavoidable neurobiological reality. Hashtag of for thine. The neurobiological architecture of compulsion.
Okay, that AB process framework is powerful.
Okay, so let's put these principles into action. Let's look at our first case study, alcohol. It's the world's most common addiction, and understanding its effect on the brain is absolutely critical just given how widespread its use is. The scale of this is just staggering. 1 in every 8 adults in the United States has an alcohol use disorder. To put that in perspective, that means alcohol is more lethal and more problematic than all other abused drugs put together, with the single exception of tobacco. So why? Why is it so powerfully addictive for some people? Well, a really big piece of the puzzle is actually in our genetics. This chart here shows the baseline levels of something called beta endorphins, which are basically the brain's natural feel-good opioids. On the left, you see people with no family history of alcoholism. And on the right, we see people who do have a family history. They just start out with significantly lower levels of these natural pleasure chemicals.
And this difference is absolutely critical. Think about it. For someone who's starting with a full tank of endorphins, a drink is, well, it's just a drink. It's fine. But for someone who's starting out with a deficit, alcohol can temporarily boost those levels up to what feels normal or even higher. For that person, that first drink isn't just fun, it's a eureka moment. It feels like a key that has finally unlocked a state of normalcy or wholeness that they may have never felt before, and that makes it profoundly, profoundly reinforcing.
All right, let's switch gears and turn to our second case study, marijuana. Now with marijuana, the brain's adaptation, its B process, it works in a slightly different but an equally powerful way.
I absolutely love this analogy for explaining marijuana's A process. Okay, just imagine your dog finds a little piece of bacon in the grass. In that moment, that bacon is the most important, the most meaningful, the most fascinating thing in the entire world. Well, marijuana does something really similar to the human brain. It hijacks what's called the Salience network. Suddenly, everything becomes bacon. The music you're listening to is the best music you've ever heard. The texture of the carpet is just incredible. That stale bag of chips in the pantry, it's the most delicious thing you have ever tasted.
So how does the brain fight back against this constant, everything is amazing signal? Well, it takes a very direct, kind of brute force approach. The brain's cannabinoid receptors, you can think of them as the little docking stations that THC plugs into, they get physically removed. The brain just stops making as many of them. It's a process called downregulation.
And the consequences of this downregulation are profound. With fewer receptors available, all the natural rewards in life, food, music, even relationships, they become less interesting, less pleasurable. It's like the color slowly drains out of everyday life. The user now needs the drug just to feel normal or to feel interested in, well, anything. And this is especially dangerous for the adolescent brain, which is still developing. Heavy use during those years can lead to permanent structural changes, altering a person's entire pleasure pathway for the rest of their life.
And all of this brings us to the final central paradox of addiction. The brain's relentless, never-ending drive for balance, for homeostasis. It leads to an outcome that is the exact opposite of what the person was seeking in the first place.
This table really says it all, doesn't it? Look at this trap. You take opiates to feel euphoric and relaxed. With chronic use, your brain produces a state of constant pain and discontent. You drink alcohol to relax and to get some sleep, your brain adapts to produce constant anxiety and insomnia. You take MDMA to feel connected and well, your brain adapts to produce depression. I mean, in every single case, the brain's B process ensures that the drug eventually creates the very state you are trying so desperately to escape.
Compulsion.
That's right. How a choice, something that feels voluntary at first, can morph into something that feels, well, necessary, almost inescapable.
We're talking about the mechanisms in the brain that drive this, looking really closely at how we chase pleasure, but often end up trapped by pain. The opponent process theory is going to be central here.
It really is. It helps explain so much about that cycle.
So let's start right at the beginning. What defines this shift? When does choice actually become compulsion?
Fundamentally, what we often call addiction is defined by impaired control.
Impaired control over a reward-seeking behavior.
Exactly. It's that point where the ability to simply choose not to do something, that freedom, it gets severely compromised.
So taking a drink, using a substance, even getting lost in, say, gaming, it starts voluntarily.
It almost always does, but it can evolve into this powerful drive, a compulsion that really starts dictating life choices. It feels less and less like a choice.
And the seriousness. It's easy to overlook because of stigma, but the impact is stark.
It really is. When you look at the data for chronic addiction, the effect on lifespan is, well, it's staggering. On average, individuals might lose around 30 years.
30 years, that really underscores the gravity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It tells you this isn't a minor issue, it's a profound chronic condition.
How do we even talk about it accurately? I hear so many terms thrown around.
Yeah.
Illness, disorder.
You do. You'll hear illness, disorder, chronic disease. From a brain perspective, chronically relapsing brain disease is quite accurate neurobiologically.
But it feels like even that doesn't capture the whole picture.
It doesn't. To really grasp the complexity, you need a broader lens. The term biopsychosociospiritual disease actually does a pretty good job.
Biopsychosociospiritual, break that down a bit.
Sure. The biological and genetic vulnerabilities. Psychological factors, trauma, mental health, so the environment, relationships, culture, and spiritual.
Spiritual, how does that fit in?
It relates to a person's sense of meaning, purpose, connection, things bigger than themselves. These factors play a role not just in why someone might become vulnerable.
But also in how they recover.
Exactly. Finding that meaning and connection is often key to sustained recovery. It addresses the whole person.
Okay, that makes sense. So if we look at the why do people start down this path in the first place? What are the core motivations?
Generally, you can boil it down to about 4 main psychological drivers. And interestingly, they all share a common goal.
Which is?
Modulating how you feel, changing your internal state.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, the obvious one, to feel good. The pursuit of pleasure, euphoria, that high.
Straightforward enough?
Second, and this is a big one, to feel better. This is self-medication, trying to escape difficult feelings.
Like anxiety.
Depression. Exactly. Crushing anxiety, deep depression, even just pervasive boredom or intense loneliness.
Yeah.
Using something to silence that internal noise, that pain.
That resonates. What's the third reason?
To do better. Performance enhancement.
Like needing a boost for confidence or maybe a cognitive edge?
Precisely. Whether it's social confidence or trying to improve focus or physical ability.
And the fourth?
Often external, social or peer pressure. Fitting in, being accepted by a group, sometimes feeling like you have to participate.
So feel good, feel better, do better, or fit in.
Broadly speaking, yes. But here's where it gets fascinating.
Go on.
Look at why people stop. Why they embrace recovery. The reasons often mirror why they started.
Really? How so?
People often choose sobriety to genuinely feel good again, in a stable way, or to feel better consistently without the substance, to do better in their lives, their jobs, their relationships.
And the social part?
That too. Sometimes their social circumstances change, moving away from environments or people that enable the use, or finding a new, supportive community.
Wow. So the underlying drive is always towards well-being, isn't it? Even if the initial path was destructive.
That's a powerful way to look at it, yes. The methods might be maladaptive, but the fundamental human desire is often for relief or improvement.
If you had to find one single thread, one underlying truth about addiction, what would it be?
I think fundamentally, it has to be seen as an attempt to escape suffering.
Escape suffering.
Yes. Think about the substances themselves. Heroin, morphine, codeine, even alcohol. What are they pharmacologically?
They're painkillers, essentially.
Powerful painkillers. They offer a temporary relief, a sense of peace, calm, maybe a feeling of control in a life that feels painful or chaotic.
So that shifts the question entirely.
It does. The crucial question isn't just why the addiction. It might be more profound to ask why the pain.
Why the underlying pain that someone is trying to numb or escape?
Exactly. For many, it's not really about seeking a high anymore, especially later on. It's about seeking oblivion, forgetting, escaping the discomfort of just being. Being alone with your own thoughts, maybe.
That's a heavy but important perspective. Now let's zoom in on the specific brain chemistry involved. Dopamine often gets called the pleasure chemical, but you're saying it's more nuanced.
Much more nuanced. While it's involved in pleasure, its primary role seems to be motivation, drive, energy, and assigning importance or salience to things.
Salience, meaning?
Meaning it flags things as important, worth pursuing again. It's the neurochemical signal that says, hey, pay attention. That was good, important for survival reward. Let's do that again. It fuels the wanting, the seeking, perhaps even more than the liking.
So it drives the behavior.
It's a huge driver. But what happens when you constantly flood the system with dopamine through high-reward activities? Drugs, gambling, intense gaming.
You mentioned dopamine exhaustion.
Right. Think of the brain's readily available dopamine like juice in a lemon. Normally, a gentle squeeze gets you some juice. But these high dopamine activities, they squeeze the lemon hard and fast.
Using it all up quickly.
Exactly. And the harder you squeeze, meaning higher doses, riskier behaviors, more potent drugs, the less juice is left. The system gets depleted.
And this chronic overstimulation plus the B process fighting back, this leads to tolerance.
Directly. Tolerance is a core physiological hallmark of addiction. It's where you need more of the drug or behavior or a more potent version just to get the same effect you got initially.
Why does that happen?
Because the brain is getting better at compensating. The B process becomes stronger, faster, and lasts longer. It adapts to the presence of the drug. So now you need that higher dose just to overcome the stronger B process and feel Well, maybe just baseline, not even high.
The brain is essentially pushing back harder.
Much harder. And this isn't just about feeling good. Chronic substance use physically damages critical brain circuits.
Which ones?
Circuits involved in learning, memory, judgment, impulse control, higher-level executive functions. This constant overload leads to physical changes.
Like what kind of changes?
One key change is downregulation. The brain literally reduces the number of dopamine receptors on its neurons.
It pulls the receivers off the field because the signal is too loud.
That's a great analogy. If the dopamine signal is constantly overwhelming, the brain protects itself by becoming less sensitive to it. Fewer receptors means less impact.
And this downregulation, it's temporary.
It can take a long time to reverse. This decrease in dopamine receptor activity is seen during withdrawal from many major substances, and it can persist for months, sometimes even years after stopping.
Wow. And the consequence of having fewer dopamine receptors.
This is devastating. It leads to a state sometimes called pleasure deafness or anhedonia.
Pleasure deafness, meaning?
Meaning the things that used to bring joy, natural rewards, hobbies, food, socializing, music, they just don't register the same way. The dopamine response to them is blunted, muted. The volume on everyday joys gets turned way down.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is, and it's a major driver of relapse. The person feels flat, dissatisfied, bored. They remember the intense high the drug gave them, and they chase it again, trying to feel something. But the reward system is damaged, so the chase is often fruitless, yet the compulsion remains. They can't get the same satisfaction, but they can't stop seeking it.
It's a vicious cycle.
Truly vicious. And this neurobiology is particularly concerning when we think about developing brains, like in adolescence.
Especially with substances like cannabis, THC.
Yes. THC works because it mimics our brain's own natural endocannabinoids. These are crucial chemicals, especially during adolescence.
What do endocannabinoids normally do?
They're vital for brain development, helping to sort important information from noise, setting values, refining decision-making pathways, pruning connections. They help sculpt the maturing brain.
So flooding a developing brain with THC interferes with that sculpting process.
Critically interferes. Chronic THC exposure, especially during those key adolescent years, causes a rapid and significant downregulation of cannabinoid receptors throughout the brain.
Just like dopamine downregulation, but for cannabinoids.
Exactly. And because this is happening while the brain is still under construction, the impact can be profound and potentially long-lasting. It can alter how the brain sets priorities, assesses risk, makes decisions,
and increase future risks.
There's evidence suggesting it can increase the risk for other substance use disorders later in life, like alcohol or opioid dependence. It seems to change the trajectory of how that young person's brain values rewards and handles stress. It can fundamentally alter identity formation, goals, social values.
So the timing of exposure matters hugely.
Hugely. But of course, biology isn't the whole story. Genetics play a role too, right? A substantial role. Having a close family member, parent, sibling with a substance use disorder increases an individual's own risk significantly, maybe 4 to 8 times the risk compared to the general population.
4 to 8 times, that's a big genetic loading.
It is. But genes aren't destiny. You need exposure for the condition to develop. This is where epigenetics comes in.
Epigenetics, that's how the environment influences gene expression.
Right. Exposure to substances or even significant stress or trauma, especially early in life, can effectively switch on certain genetic vulnerabilities that might have otherwise stayed dormant.
So the genes load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger.
That's a classic way to put it. You need both vulnerability and exposure. No one becomes addicted without being exposed to the substance or behavior.
Which also explains why not everyone who tries a substance becomes addicted.
Exactly. Think about alcohol. Maybe 90% of the population is exposed at some point, but only around 15% develop alcohol use disorder. That highlights the crucial role of individual vulnerability, that mix of genetics and life experience.
That 15% has a different underlying profile.
A different susceptibility, yes.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to how the B process really takes over in those individuals.
Right. You mentioned earlier that the B process doesn't just react anymore, it becomes anticipatory.
This is the critical shift in chronic addiction. Through learning specifically, classical conditioning like Pavlov's dogs, the brain learns to predict the arrival of the drug based on cues in the environment.
Cues, like what?
People, places, specific times of day, objects associated with use, certain music, even smells or types of weather, anything consistently paired with the substance use.
And when the brain detects these cues,
it doesn't wait for the drug. It preemptively triggers the B process. It launches the counterattack before the A process even starts.
Wow, so the B process starts running just based on a reminder.
Instantly and automatically. And that feeling, that triggered anticipatory B process, that is the feeling of craving.
Okay, wait. Craving isn't wanting the high. Craving is the B process.
In this chronic stage, yes. And crucially, remember what the B process feels like. It's the opposite of the drug's effect. So if the drug brought pleasure or relief, the B process brings dysphoria.
Dysphoria, so unpleasantness, agitation, pain.
Exactly. Craving, in this sense, is a deeply unpleasant, miserable, agitating state. It feels bad. So the person isn't using to get high anymore.
They're using to make the craving stop, to silence the B process.
Precisely. They're using just to feel normal, to escape the anticipatory dysphoria triggered by the cues. The motivation has completely flipped from seeking pleasure to escaping this internally generated pain.
That explains why relapse can happen even when someone consciously doesn't want to use. The craving feels unbearable.
It can feel physiologically unbearable. It's driven by these powerful environmental triggers. The conditioning is incredibly strong.
Like Pavlov's dog salivating at the bell, even without food.
Exactly like that. There are stories of scientists sober for decades who hear a specific sound, maybe something mundane, that just happened to be present during past use, and they experience an immediate, overwhelming physical craving, that B process kicking in full force after years.
It bypasses conscious thought entirely.
Hits the autonomic nervous system directly. And the strength of this drive, this compulsion fueled by the B process, is just immense.
How immense.
It can override the most fundamental survival instincts. We see this in animal studies.
Really?
Yes. An animal conditioned to associate a cue with a drug will pursue that cue even when faced with a direct threat, like the presence or scent of a known predator they'd normally flee from.
They'll ignore the danger to seek the drug cue.
They will. It shows how deeply this hijacks core brain systems. It's not a moral feeling. It's a profound physiological impairment of survival drives.
That puts the impaired control aspect into stark perspective.
It really does. And we have to remember, this internal brain struggle is happening within a wider context.
Society, economics?
Yes. Modern society often accelerates compulsion. Think about technological innovation, marketing.
How so?
They constantly work to increase the brain reward potential of products, making substances cheaper, more potent, more rapidly delivered. Think fentanyl versus older opioids, or highly engineered processed foods, or the immediacy of digital rewards.
Faster, stronger hits of dopamine.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And easier access. This is why friction becomes so important in policy or personal strategy.
Friction, like making it harder to get the substance or engage in the behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Adding steps, delays, cost anything that slows down the immediate stimulus response loop. Historically, effective regulation often involves creating friction. Think about limiting access, raising prices, time locks on apps.
Does this apply to behavioral addictions too, like social media or gaming?
Absolutely. Those platforms are expertly designed to exploit the same dopamine pathways. They often offer easier, faster, more predictable routes to fulfilling basic human needs.
Like connection or feeling competent.
Right. Needs like community, identity, status, competence. You can get a quick, curated hit of validation online much faster and with less risk than navigating complex, messy, real-world interactions.
Which makes the real world seem less appealing.
Or just boring in comparison, as many people describe it. The constant availability of high dopamine digital stimuli can recalibrate your brain's reward threshold, making normal life feel dull.
So the environment is constantly pushing these buttons.
It is, which makes navigating recovery even more challenging.
Okay, so if addiction is this state where the B process dominates, driven by cues and leading to dysphoria, how does recovery work? How do you reverse that?
Recovery is essentially a process of readaptation. The brain needs time without the A process constantly triggering the B process. It requires sustained abstinence.
So the B process can finally calm down.
Gradually, yes. It needs time to fade back towards a normal baseline. But it takes time. And the rule generally holds. The longer, the more intense, the more regular the past use.
The longer it takes for the B process to normalize.
Exactly. This isn't a quick fix. It's a long game, demanding significant time and consistent effort. We're talking years for the brain to fully recalibrate, not weeks or months.
That sounds daunting.
It can be. It often requires what many in recovery describe as a kind of complete surrender.
Surrender to what?
A surrender of old ways of thinking, coping, living, a willingness to let go of the idea that you could manage it on your own or that the old life was working. It often means embracing entirely new ways of being.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Definitely. Clinically, stable remission is often considered achieved only after 5 or more years of continuous abstinence and positive life changes. It takes that long for the risk of relapse to significantly decrease.
5 years, okay. So what helps people stay the course? You mentioned connection earlier.
Yes, this idea is crucial. If addiction is often a disease of isolation, of alienation, then the opposite, the antidote, is connection.
Connection to other people.
Deep, meaningful connection. Modern life sometimes pushes us towards isolation, doesn't it? Prioritizing, say, square footage over friendships, or accumulating stuff over building community.
We trade connection for other things.
Sometimes, and that can create vulnerability. Recovery often involves actively rebuilding those connections or building new healthy ones. Finding your ladder people.
Ladder people, I like that, as opposed to
shovel people. Ladder people are those who see you struggling in a hole and they put themselves out, extend a hand, offer support to help you climb out. People just jump in the hole with you and keep digging, maybe enabling or making things worse.
Finding those ladder people is key.
Essential. But to truly connect with them, you need vulnerability.
Being willing to be seen, warts and all.
Exactly. Allowing yourself to be seen in your pain, your shame, your fear, that's terrifying. But it's often the necessary doorway to genuine intimacy and support. You can't connect deeply if you're hiding.
Okay, connection is huge. What about practical day-to-day strategies for managing things?
There are some really effective, often simple, daily practices. Things that cost nothing but time and willingness. One powerful tool is a daily inventory.
A daily inventory, like taking stock.
Exactly. A structured way to check in with yourself. Might involve listing specific things you're grateful for, actively looking for the good.
Gratitude lists, yeah.
Checking in honestly with your emotional state, just naming the feelings without judgment. Identifying specific character traits or negative thought patterns you want to watch out for that day. Maybe impatience, resentment, fear.
Yeah, being mindful of your own pitfalls.
Yes. And then, crucially, defining positive principles you want to actively strive for in the next 24 hours. Things like patience, tolerance, honesty, kindness.
So it's about setting a positive intention for the day, grounded in self-awareness.
Precisely. It prepares the mind, makes you more resilient to the inevitable stresses and triggers. Another vital skill, perhaps the most overlooked, is distress tolerance.
Learning how to feel bad, basically.
Learning how to tolerate feeling bad without immediately acting to escape it. Whether it's a physical craving or intense emotional pain like anger, sadness, or anxiety.
How do you do that? It sounds simple but feels hard.
The key is recognizing that discomfort, however intense, is temporary. It comes in waves. It's just a series of moments. If you can just sit with it, breathe through it, maybe just for 20 seconds, 30 seconds.
Just ride out that initial peak.
Often, yes. That brief pause can be enough to break the immediate compulsion, to allow your rational mind to come back online. It creates space between the feeling and the action. That space is choice. Realizing the B process craving, while intense, will peak and subside if you don't feed it. That's incredibly empowering.
This too shall pass.
That ancient wisdom is pure distress tolerance. Another practical tool is movement, physical exercise.
How does exercise help?
Multiple ways. It helps calm an anxious mind, burns off stress hormones. It can be a powerful antidote to that feeling of internal chaos or insanity common in early recovery.
And neurochemically.
There's evidence it actually aids in the regeneration of dopamine receptors. It helps the brain heal, slowly reversing that pleasure deafness. It helps you start finding joy in healthy activities again.
So connection, daily practices, distress tolerance, movement. What about formal support?
Absolutely crucial. Recovery rarely happens in a vacuum. Peer support is huge.
Like 12-step programs, AA, NA.
Those are the most well-known and highly effective for many. Their strength often lies in being non-professional, non-hierarchical, widely available, and free. They provide that vital community, that shared experience. And the principle of service helping others is incredibly therapeutic in itself. But there are many other peer support models now too.
Finding the right fit.
Finding what works for the individual. And alongside peer support, professional treatment is often indispensable.
Therapy, counseling.
Yes, and a proper medical and psychiatric assessment. We know there's a huge overlap, maybe 60% between substance use disorders and other mental health conditions like anxiety and depression.
Co-occurring disorders, they need to be treated together.
Absolutely. Treating the depression or anxiety is often key to maintaining sobriety. And this includes considering medication-assisted treatment, MAT, where appropriate.
Like methadone, buprenorphine, naltrexone.
Exactly. These medications can be life-saving. They help stabilize the brain chemistry, reduce cravings, block the effects of opioids. They give the person breathing room.
They provide a platform for recovery.
A stable platform, yes. They allow the deeper psychological and spiritual healing to happen over time, reducing the constant fight against overwhelming withdrawal or craving. It's about using all the tools available.
So putting it all together, this deep dive really shows addiction not just as a pursuit of pleasure gone wrong, but as this complex interplay with the brain's own compensatory mechanisms, that powerful B process eventually becoming the source of the pain itself.
Understanding that neurobiological reality, that physics of it, is so important. It removes shame and opens the door to effective strategies. It's a chronic relapsing condition, but it is treatable.
And the freedom people find in recovery, it's not necessarily about flashy external success.
Often, the most profound freedom reported is simply freedom from the compulsion, freedom from that constant internal battle, that obsession, being free just to choose how you spend your day, your energy, your thoughts. That quiet freedom is miraculous.
That makes sense. This whole discussion about the brain seeking balance, about the A and B processes, it feels like it speaks to a broader human challenge, doesn't it?
I think it does. Philosophers and theologians have talked for centuries about the need to order our lives. Living a good life, a meaningful life, requires constantly choosing what truly matters.
Choosing connection, meaning growth,
over the easier, temporary escapes offered by various compulsions, whether they're substances or behaviors. It's about prioritizing long-term well-being over short-term relief, a constant reordering.
So maybe a final thought for people to take away from this, something to chew on.
Well, if the initial impulse driving addictive behavior is often to numb feelings, to escape pain, maybe the ultimate lesson of recovery, the core skill for a truly autonomous life, is learning how to feel bad.
Learning how to tolerate discomfort.
Yes. Truly internalizing that cravings, however intense they feel, are temporary. That the B process will peak and fade, that emotional pain can be endured without acting destructively. Realizing this too shall pass isn't just a platitude. It's the fundamental key to unlocking yourself from the cycle. Learning to sit with discomfort is learning to be free.
Learning how to feel bad to ultimately feel free. That's a powerful place to end. Thank you.
Thank you.